Alright everyone, hello, this is Pascal Charbonneau, live from Sarasota, Florida tonight. This is my first Banter Blitz in this new studio that we just set up here. I'm playing my first game here against Frankie for Fingers. I like that name, it's a good one. I'm playing the King's Indian here. One of the openings I played when I was a kid. You know, I haven't played in a tournament in a little while, so hopefully this gives a couple of the premium members a good chance to beat me. This line is an old pawn sacrifice line. It's supposed to be okay for black, at least last I checked, but of course I don't remember any of the theory. I think here the move is knight d7, but I'm not frankly too sure. Actually, maybe not. This shows that it's been a little while. Alright, what do I do here? The King's Indian is, of course, a little bit of a dangerous opening to play when you don't know what you're doing. But that's okay. I think knight d7 is the move. I don't really remember, though. Alright, so bishop e7. So now, I guess I'd have to take it, right? Because if I play rook e8, there's knight c7. He takes the rook. Actually, rook e8. Well, rook e8, there's also bishop a3. So I think I have to take this. And play king f8. Knight d5, okay. Yeah, I think this is the theory, but of course I could be wrong. Take the pawn on b2. Okay, so in these positions, usually you're down a pawn, but have some kind of compensation. Hopefully I have reasonable compensation here. I think that I might. It's mostly about the dark squares. So now, maybe I play b6. I gotta try to hit the c4 pawn in some way. I also could play knight e5. I have to watch for sort of knight c7 tricks. Knight c5 might make sense. He's a little bit behind in development, but of course his position is, you know, he is up a pawn. I might play b6 next. So this, of course, he can take on g6 soon, and that's fine. I'm going to take back with the h-pawn. I don't think he's got too much going on there in the h-file, but of course he can maybe play knight h3, get his knight out. Now he's got ideas of knight g5 coming. Knight g5, I can probably play h6, so I may be able to just develop here. Otherwise, maybe I can take on h3, play rook c8, and play that position, but it's not that appealing really. I think I'll do that just because I don't like this, but I think white's probably better. So this is a bit of a rough opening start for me here in the first game. Frankie for Fingers is playing well so far. So now I'm going to try to play against this pawn on c4. I think this is not a lost cause at all, but certainly, you know, the knight on d5 is a strong piece, and I can't really dislodge it ever. So he's probably better. The question is how much better, and can he convert it? Maybe I can try to reroute the knight, you know, either from b7 to d6, or maybe from... Alright, so he plays this move, or e6, d4, or let's see. So I can try different paths here. I think I'll play knight e6 to start. Not sure what really the idea behind g3 was. Now I'm threatening knight g5 to, you know, hitting the rook and hitting f3. So, and then maybe I can look at playing something like, all right, so here, that's a reasonable move. He wants to play maybe e5 to shut down my bishop. Maybe I'll play knight c7. I still think he's doing quite well here. You know, his knight is just such a strong piece. So now my idea, of course, is that this stops playing e5, but maybe he can just play bishop g2. Bishop g2, I could simply go back and hit the c4 pawn. of course, this is all a little bit of a struggle. I wonder if at some point maybe I try b5. This is just a tough position, really. Just hard to get much counterplay. I'll play rook c3. I have to start to move a little bit faster also. My position is really kind of garbage here, I think, but I got to try to go over some tricks. But he's played very well, so. At some point I might be able to try to play something like f5 just to break. I'm going to have to break that pawn center. Okay, so this I'm actually reasonably happy to see, because I don't think that this pawn majority is going to be especially effective. So now I'll put my bishop on d4. Maybe the king can come to g7 if needed, and I'm going to try to maybe play rook e3 or. All right, so this move is reasonable. Play rook c7. Of course, the bishop covers the h8 square, which is good. He can play rook h1, threatening rook h8. Well, actually not threatening it yet, but if I play rook e7, he could try rook h8, but then my rook is protected, so that seems okay. But of course, his position is he's still doing well here. He's got sort of a, up a pawn, but it's a little bit, I feel like he maybe is going to struggle to convert this. Now I may be able to, can I play, let's see. We'll just take on f5 first. And I may be able to play rook e3 or rook e2 check in some cases. So my position, I feel like I'm mostly out of trouble. I mean, I'm probably still a little bit worse, but it looks more reasonable now for me than it did a few moves ago. It's going to be hard for him to win this, I think. Now d6 is possible. Of course, his pawn is getting stronger, but I think it's not going to just. I don't think it's going to be a killer. Okay, so here. Well, d6, d7 is still clearly a decent plan. All right, so now I have to be a little bit careful. Start with this move. I'll just put the bishop back because I was worried about some rook g1 ideas that might be quite annoying. Still is a tough position for me here. Just going to bring the king to e7, and now it's really just a matter of whether I can hold this, which I think there's a reasonable chance that I can, but it still is not trivial. Try to harass his bishop a little bit. Now it's just it might go down to the last few seconds here. He's obviously still doing just fine. I think I'm sort of solid enough to hold, though. This doesn't really do anything. I'm just kind of... Okay, so now it's just becoming a race. Which I may win just... well, this was a this was a tough game. I apologize. This was really not the way I intended to win, but somehow I managed to pull it together at the end. But yeah, good game. Good game by Frankie for Fingers. I certainly had my hands full in this one. I got a challenge here from another very high rated player, 2800. So I'll accept this one. We'll see what happens. All right, I think I'll say goodbye to the King's Indian for now. This was enough punishment for one game. So we'll play the Queen's Gambit Decline. This is a, of course, a fairly popular opening here. Oh, actually, did I just blunder? I think I just blundered a pawn here. This is not the right move order. I'm supposed to castle first. So now I have to take with the king because because if I take with the queen, there's knight takes d5. Of course, this is not the intended setup. The idea to trade bishops is sound. But actually, I think he, of course, he's doing well here, but maybe he didn't quite go for the kill. So maybe I can survive this. Okay, he can play f4. I think I gotta start thinking about how to develop my bishop, but I'll probably play knight b8 and knight f8 and just kind of, it's obviously a groveling position at this point. Maybe I'll play queen d6. I have to be able to somehow develop my bishop. But I think I'm getting there, so maybe b6, bishop b7. At some point I'll play for c5, and hopefully the worst is behind in terms of my position here. Of course, not the proper way to play the opening. Don't they say sometimes don't do this at home. This would be one of those cases. So he's trying to get some knight g4 going. I mean, I think it makes sense, but it's also, my position is solid enough at this point. So knight g4 I would just take, knight takes, and then the queen covers h6. So that seems to be not really the end of the world. I also probably can consider playing knight e4 now. I have to watch a little bit. His queen is going to get to g4, and it could be a little bit dangerous, but I think I'm holding here. Alright, so queen h5. So now he's threatening queen f7, of course. This is actually not so simple. I kind of misplayed this. On queen f6 he can play knight g4, and that seems to be pretty dangerous. So I might be in some trouble again here. How do I play this? This is actually hard to even survive for a few moves. I may have to... I think I have to play rook e7, and then on knight g4 I have to do something like king h8, but this is really, or maybe king h7 actually. Yeah, I have to do something like this, but he can take on f7. Obviously he's better again. So my openings have been faulting me here so far in this Banter Blitz. But so knight f7, I'll play queen g6, try to trade queens, and just hopefully not lose right away. So I actually think I might be able to survive this a little bit. I have, at some point there'll be knights hanging, and maybe c takes d4. He can play knight g5 check, king g8. The king escapes. Of course, not a desirable outcome here. You might have, this is the kind of position where it's certainly possible that there's some winning move, but I haven't quite seen it yet. So now, let's see, it might make sense to leave those knights as they are, because they're a little bit of a target. So I could try to play knight h5, knight h4 maybe. That's what I'll do. But certainly not, still a difficult position. So now I want to try to attack these knights. He does have the move rook h3 at some point, which will allow him to get out with knight g5. So that's a little bit of an annoying thing. So I'll just take the pawn back. But yeah, his position is obviously still much better here. trying to do this to complicate things here. But this is not a... Okay, so he played there. He could have possibly just taken on e4 instead. Now maybe I'll do this. I have no time, so I have to start moving fast too. This might be a loss. Oh boy, that's not a good move. So now this is going to be a completely lost rook endgame. But you know, with rook endgames, you always try. Now it might actually be a draw. Oops. Although I'll probably lose on time. Oh, it was close. Well, good game. Adam 657. Well, I got to start playing faster, I think, is one of the lessons. And second, I should try to not blunder pawns in the opening in every game. All right, I'm gonna play here against John Tadros. I can see that it's difficult to play the faster games, especially the 3-minute ones. When you're talking, you really get low on time pretty quickly. So this is a 3-minute game. I'm going to try to move faster in this one. Play the ready, which is an opening I've played a lot since I play fewer tournaments and a little bit more online chess. It's usually easier to play a little bit quicker. So hopefully that will help me bounce back. I don't love the bishop on d6 here. Of course, it's playable, but the bishop might kind of be a target. Play rook d1 to put the rook on the file of with the queen here. So here I got to prepare e4. Always have to watch with the queen here that it doesn't get in some kind of trouble, but I think here it's okay. E4 kind of forces e5, but he just wasted 2 tempos playing knight e7, knight g6. So I think that is helpful for me. And in these positions, so now it gets a little bit tactical. So after I take, probably play f4, and then in this case, the queen being here makes it unpleasant, to say, at least unpleasant. Maybe not more than unpleasant, but now I probably want to play e5. Sometimes the pawn on b7 is going to hang. So queen e7, e5, for example. This pin against the bishop is irritating. So he's, so he makes this move, which is probably a decent move given the circumstances, but it's definitely not a pleasant position here. So on knight g4, I would probably just play h3 and g4. I don't think I have to worry about a sacrifice there. I do want to play h3 because I don't have the e3 square for my bishop so easily. I could take on b7, queen b7, rook d7, but I would rather not give up the bishop on g2, which is really the main piece defending my king. Now, of course, if I'm allowed, I'd love to play f5. Threaten to take on h6, ruin his pawn structure there. So sorry about this on the board here. Alright, so he goes for the sacrifice. I am not too surprised. I don't think there's much to be worried about for me because, simply the h3 squared is covered by the queen also, so that's not really, so there's no issue there, and so really he doesn't have much of a follow-up for the attack here. So I might try to, I just got to try to consolidate here. It'd be nice if I had the d1 square for the rooks. Of course, I do not. So what's the best way to do this here? I may play queen c4 with the idea to play queen e4. Also frees up this bishop from defending the f4 pawn. So now I can play either bishop b4. Actually looks pretty good. It kind of kicks the queen far away. But queen e4 is reasonable too. I will play bishop e4. You know, it had the h5 square before, but now it doesn't, so that seems to make sense. Then I may, let's see. I think I'll just play rook c1, rook c2, try to bring the rook into the game like this. I could play rook d2 next. And so his queen is kind of being chased around, and now my pieces are well placed, and the king kind of is out in the open, but it doesn't have any. There's no immediate danger either. All right, so here I can just play queen e2. He goes there. Okay, so now I guess I'll just play. I could play bishop f3, but it seems like it's probably better to just keep the queens at this point. Still have to watch the time. I'm not playing incredibly fast. At some point I might consider taking the a7 pawn if given the opportunity. Actually, now I like bishop f3 because his queen is on a passive square, and so it makes sense to trade. All right, so he's attacking the rook, of course. I'm just going to play rook d2. Can't fall for the rook here. One of the good things about having played bishop f3 is that now I finally have the d1 square for my rook. So this one now it should be pretty should be fairly straightforward to win this. Queen b1 check shouldn't really do too much. I just have to play a little bit quicker. That's not a good move, but oh boy. So I'm sort of hanging everything here, but hopefully I win on time. Actually, I managed to checkmate, so somehow, but not the most convincing, not the best technique, I would say, to finish off the game. But it was a good game though. Good game, John Tadros. I have to figure out how to see the chat here. Okay, now I think I got it. Because I apologize if I wasn't answering. It's because I was not seeing the chat in the. All right, I'm going to play a 5-minute game here against Dim Knight. This is the first one that I see. All right, let's play e4 in this game. You know, we have the a big game coming up tomorrow, Alireza Firouzja against Magnus Carlsen. I'll try to play e4 like Alireza is likely to play. I'm not sure I'm going to play it exactly like he does. In fact, that is a safe bet that I will not. All right, so I don't feel like playing any Marshall in this game, so I will just play h3. Okay, so my opponent was not looking to play the Marshall because he pre-moved d6. So this is an old classic variation called the Chigorin. I'm not going to play any real theory here. I'm just gonna try to develop my pieces and keep things safe. He was threatening the bishop. He's got to watch the e-pawn. This is a normal move, I believe. So I think I can play. Let's see here. Do I have to play a3? I'm trying to see if on knight d2 he plays knight b4, rook c1. Trying to see if there's some queen takes c1, bishop takes c1, knight takes d3. That's a little bit annoying. So I may just play a3, which I think is okay. All right. So now this is kind of normal. I probably can play d5 at some point, actually, especially because his knight doesn't have any particularly good square here. So I rather like this. Now I can do sort of a standard maneuver. Maybe g4. Should I play g4 first, or I'll play g4 first? I think his counterplay is going to be kind of slow here. So I think I can just play a4, not worry about this file. And now I have a nice square on c4, so my knight on f1, or the knight on f3 actually. Either knight could get recycled to this square, and I think it's quite pleasant. So I'll actually bring the knight back right away. So now his knight doesn't have time to get to b6. My bishop on c1 is probably not incredibly well placed, unless at some point I can play f4. And so in this case, especially now that the bishop is on f8, I like the idea. Oh, well, this knight on b6 looks like it's just hanging, so I'll take it. Alright, so now I just stole a piece. And so after stealing a piece, you would think I should be able to convert without any major problems. I'm going to open up the position because it is tempting to do so. And yeah, so this one should be a simple win now. It's tempting to take with the rook on f6. Yeah, I'll do it just to kind of keep the attack going here. Certainly wasn't required, but it looks like it's going to be a quicker way to win. So I'll play rook f1. Got a lot of pieces coming at the king here. All right, now the bishop on g7 is hanging. I can take it either with the bishop or with the knight. I'll take it with the bishop. If the f pawn moves, there's the f7 pawn hanging here, so this is going to be mate. I can mate with knight f6 or e5 or a few different. Maybe bishop f6 is actually the only mate in one. Well, other move the bishop anywhere, I guess. But all right. I'm just trying to see here how I can see the chat. I'm going to ask my producer here before I start the next game, so I'll just take a second here to try to figure this out. I apologize for my technical glitches on my first couple days, but this should be pretty quick. So because I see, yeah, I'm not sure how I can pop the chat out. I may just need to have a different window open. Maybe that's what I'll do. But anyway, I'll figure this out by the next game. I don't want to keep people waiting, so I'm going to play a game here against Monty 24, 2300 or so. It's a 5-minute game, so I'll have a little bit more time to keep babbling. Play the Sicilian here. I'll continue with my Ali Reza repertoire and try to play the Najdorf. Not an opening that I know particularly well, so we'll see how it turns out. I'm going to try to keep playing. I have to say, after bishop e3, I don't feel like playing all the e5 lines, so I'm just going to switch to the dragon. I do this in Blitz sometimes. This becomes the, I forget what they call it. It's a hybrid between a dragon and a Najdorf. The Dragendorf, maybe? A few good players in the US, particularly, Alex Shabalov used to play this. Of course, he would normally, I don't know if he would play it from this move order, but probably a dubious opening, but it is playable, especially in Blitz. All right, h3 is a sort of a normal way to play this. They prepare g4, and on my side, the idea behind not castling is that the second you castle, white is happy to play bishop h6. And so in the meantime, I'm just making useful moves. So he's going to be able to play g4 now. I was thinking that I can play knight b6. Frankly, I don't really know I don't really know the proper way to play this. I might be threatening b4 here, but of course it's always complicated. Even if you win a pawn, it can be very dangerous for black. I'm actually kind of happy to see g5 because that means that the lines are not going to be open in front of my king that quickly. Now I could conceivably castle next move, and it doesn't feel all that scary. I'm not sure if I'll castle next move, but I probably could. At some point I was considering b4 too, but now with bishop d3, he does have a retreat square. I could consider knight e5 to try to win the bishop pair. And that seems like a reasonable move, so I'm going to try that. Of course, it kind of sometimes winning the bishop pair is not that amazing because it wastes a lot of time. But hopefully this is okay. I'm thinking that if he plays f4, at some point I might be able to strike with e5 before he gets a bind with f4, f5. Well, now, so this is interesting. I mean, I think once the queen leaves the square, it's really tempting to play rook takes c3. I'm pretty sure I have to do that right now. Pawn takes and knight a4. And okay, I mean, I don't know that it's, you know, incredibly good for me, but it's you know, as a dragon player, you kind of wait for these moments where you're able to sacrifice on c3. I remember, you know, even from when I was 12 years old, you know, it's like that's what you're always hoping for. So I'm just gonna. The thing is, oftentimes there's not a crushing follow up. It's really just lingering pressure, and the bishop on g7, you know, can kind of spring to life at any point. In this version, it actually might be just quite good for black. I can't say that I love his chances here because so that's probably the best move. Now the question is, can I try something like, so knight takes f3 is tempting with the idea knight takes c3, bishop takes. His queen is under attack, and then I have like mating nets with queen a5 and queen a3. But he may, it's close. It's very close. It's very close, but it might not be winning for me. So I think I'm actually just gonna play it slow. It's, you know, in a 5-minute game, you don't quite have time to work it all out. All right, so now of course he goes there. I'm gonna play knight c4, I think. And I still feel like this position is difficult for him. If he plays bishop takes c4, probably queen takes c4, but both moves are kind of possible. I'm just gonna play it quickly because I don't want to waste too much time. And now I may be threatening a simple move like b4 with the idea that it undermines his knight. All right, this move. Well, on this move, the thing is now he's giving material back, so I can simply take on h1. I'm happy to actually give that bishop away. Now I'll open this up, and then you know, I'm going to have sort of a few comfortable options here. I could play b4, looks quite strong, but I also can just take on c3, possibly take on e5, or maybe even a rook c8. Sort of a lot of options here. I'm not sure which one is best. I may actually play rook c8. The thing is, I think he's got knight c6 coming, so I like the idea of just bringing one more piece into the fray here. b4, you know, gets even stronger with the rook on c8 because of c2 possibly hanging. All right, so he goes here. Right. Probably a good move. So now, what do I do? I'm tempted to really just keep playing positionally and just play e6. That's what I'll do. I mean, it's at this point I'm not down any material, so there's no huge rush. All right, so I'll probably take on c3 because at some point I have to take. Well, actually, I just realized that the rook on f1 is not protected, so it's a good thing I'm talking. Maybe if I weren't talking, I may have just played quickly and not seen that the rook was hanging. So good game, tough game. Not an easy opening for either side to play, really. All right, so here we go. I still haven't. Let me figure out this chat situation really quickly. I think if I go back maybe to, well, I don't see it. So someone will eventually tell me how to do that. So I'm going to play Michael Tal here. This is the first challenge I see. 5-minute game from Germany. I'm going to play d4. I'm going to switch to the Magnus repertoire. So the Magnus repertoire is actually a hogwash of, or a hodgepodge, I should say, of a lot of different things. And in this game, I'll play bishop f4, which is one of the systems that he has sort of brought back into the map. You know, of course, we can call them the old masters, used to think this move was sort of harmless, and maybe rightly so, but chess has changed a little bit, and it's becoming a little bit more of a practical game, and also it seems like computers find chances to get playable positions and all sorts of things. So, you know, the sort of been the opposite of the death of chess via the computer. It's actually been sort of a rebirth of old ideas, is how I see it. So he's played fine here. He's got to be a little bit careful not to let b4, b5 happen. I'm sort of threatening. I was sort of threatening maybe bishop takes b8 with rook takes a7. You know, maybe a defensible position. Now the question is, so here, once white is able to play b5, it's usually pretty unpleasant. He really has to try to play knight h5, you know, because now that I just have b5 in and he's not getting this bishop, it's just a much worse position for black. So yeah, so the question is now, what's the right way to defend the b pawn? I may, well, he's not, so of course there's no rook b8, right, because the bishop on f4 covers it. So I'm just going to play simply castle, and now the target is going to be this a pawn, which I can maybe play rook a2, rook a2 and hit it with rook a1. That's what I'm going to do. And white has more space, so it's just a bit of a nagging position. He still has chances, actually. I probably didn't play this quite right. He's maybe got a chance to get e5 in. This doesn't worry me too much, but especially because e5, you know, would have gained a tempo at some point on this. Now rook a1, and the problem is the c6 pawn is also going to be a target, sort of lingering target. I have a choice between playing b4 here and taking the pawn. I like playing b4 first, just to give myself extra options. I still may end up taking with the rook, but I can also consider taking with the pawn. So this is just a difficult endgame here. Probably just lost. You know, b4, b5 is also another way to create a passed pawn. I'm just going to take this pawn, and all right. So what is the cleanest way to play this here? I'm going to start by putting the bishop on d6. Then I'll probably just play rook a7. Now my idea is probably to play bishop a6, which is going to force the rook off of the c file, and then I can play b5, create a passed pawn, and just push it through. Or I could try to go for that pawn with, you know, rook c7. So of course this is not a good situation for black. This move, bishop c2, well, rook a8 is kind of giving it just trying to see if I'm going to play too fast, but yeah. So good game. Good game. I played anti-Tal in this game by going very positional. So all right, let's see. Next game, John Tadros. 5-minute game. I'm going to play d4 again. Keep going with the Magnus repertoire. I feel like I'm getting a little bit more comfortable here. Last few games I've played a little bit better. So we'll see if I can get on a roll. I'm sure everyone's excited about tomorrow's game in Wei-Kanze. In fact, after this Banter Blitz, I'm going to be recording a preview of the Magnus Carlsen game against Ali Reza Firouzja. Magnus, you know, on the heels of having won a game yesterday, and both players, of course, are fresh after a rest day today. And Ali Reza has the white pieces. I'm curious to see if Magnus goes for the Sicilian or if he plays something more solid like e4, e5, or something different. He can also surprise us, of course. So c6 here played in this game. On bishop f5, I'll play f3 just out of principle. It's without a knight on f3. There's no reason for me to pin myself. Although of course there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with that move. So should I play? I'm just going to start with bishop g3 and maybe play knight e2, knight f4. I don't think this is necessarily this is sort of a blitz plan more than a serious serious attempt at refuting the black opening here, because it's probably a little bit too loose. So I'm sure black is okay. Now I'm going to switch back to sort of playing queen b3 and maybe play an endgame. Alright, this I think I'm happy to see. I don't mind if he checks me king f2. That's not too scary to me. I think the king is pretty well placed actually on f2 here. And now queen b3 could be annoying because of the b7 pawn behind, although he's got, you know, the old Slav move queen e7 that defends it. This looks loose to me, so I'm just going to play knight e5. Now I could consider playing h4, h5 at some point. Yeah, I think b5 is a little bit loose. It's not horrible, but it's a little bit loose. I may have a4, or I don't know. Still playable, but I have ideas like, you know, h4 might be annoying to meet next move. I also think even taking the bishop is probably a little bit better for white. Maybe with the f knight. Okay, so on this move, now h4 is really kind of begging to be played. h4, knight h5. Let me just start with rook c1. Seems kind of logical to put pressure on the c pawn, and he's still got some issues developing his pieces. Alright, queen a5. So he's threatening the a pawn, and I guess he wants to play bishop d2, which is an odd looking move, but I think, so on bishop d2 here, I can actually play b4, and that looks like it's just winning. So I don't think, you know, it's a, plus the bishop on d2. The bishop, there's something off looking about the bishop on d2. Alright, so now this move is interesting. Tempting to take on g6. I also could take on c6. A few options here. I can try to take the c pawn also. I have to make sure I don't think forever here. Actually, if knight takes c6, I could just play. I don't know that this was the most accurate. I mean, I'm winning a pawn, but it's going to be a little bit of counterplay as things get simplified here. But I decided that was so now I actually like taking on d6. Keeping two bishops, and yeah, this I think is quite pleasant for me. Now I can take on c6. He probably could have played rook c8, and then, you know, it was still a fight. Now I think this should be just about a clean piece. I would love to develop my bishop. Last piece remaining here. Not really any threat, so I'm just going to get the bishop out. Okay, I think I can trade rooks. And then I'll just play bishop c5 to keep that file closed, and now it's just a matter of winning up a piece. I'll probably play, let's see, I'll play queen e1 to start, chase the queen away. Then I'll just play queen d2 and rook c1. He's got some check, g3, not the end of the world. Here I think I'll play h4 to just push the queen a little further back. Then I'll probably, depending on where he goes, I'll either play e4. Here I can play e4, I think. Or just rook c1 first, but e4 I don't love that he sometimes has some rook takes c5. I'll just play rook c1 first. Okay, well now I certainly can play e4, and I'm going to try to trade queens, and this should be the end of the game. Queen g5 next, maybe. Alright, so we'll trade queens. Now this should be beyond the possibility of me messing this up. Just going for more trades here. All right. Well, it was a good game. Can't stop the pawn without sacrificing the rook. All right, good game. All right, I'm going to take a 5-minute break here and figure out the chat situation so that I can come back, and at least for the last like 20 minutes or so I can respond to the chat, because right now I can't see the chat. So give me 5 minutes here, and then I'll play 3 or 4 more games. So give me just a few minutes. Alright, I'm actually back. I'm just going to keep playing. For next time, I'm obviously going to figure this out. But in the meantime, I'm just going to keep playing a few more games here. I have time for maybe 3 more. After that, we'll take a quick break, and we'll be right back with a pre-show for a pre-show for tomorrow's game in Weikanze featuring Magnus Carlsen and Firuza. So, all right, I'm going to play the regular Queen's Gambit here. I've had enough of this Bishop F4 stuff. So I'll play the Queen's Gambit here. There's actually been a fair bit of development in these lines where often white castles queenside now, and so I may try one of those. Vincent Brassard is a Canadian sounding name. I'm not sure if we have a Québécois here playing against me, but if so, that's great. I'm happy to see some old faces. For those that don't know, I grew up in Montreal. French was my first language. If you hear a little bit or a lot of an accent, that is why. But I've been in the United States for the better of 20 years, so it's quite a while already. And yeah, I live in Sarasota, Florida. Beautiful place, by the way, if anybody wishes to come visit. Some awesome beaches. It's warm. Today was actually a cold day, but cold for Sarasota is not cold for Montreal, where I was from. This position, I think, just going back to the chess for a second here, the knight on c6 is a little bit misplaced. So that definitely gives white an edge. Black eventually wants to achieve the c7, c5 break. Otherwise, there just isn't that much counterplay so easily. So, I mean, of course, it's still a game. So, which rook to put to d1? I'm gonna, I'll put the f. Well, hard to decide which rook to put where in any of these positions. I decided to do this one. We'll see if that was a good idea or not. Of course, I want to keep my bishop. Bishop on b1 looks ugly, but it's only temporary. All right, so he wants to trade a pair of knights. Curious to see how I should play this. I'm probably going to do a move that's a cardinal sin, giving up my bishop for no apparent reason. But I thought it made sense because of the control of the c5 square. So we'll see. So if he goes, okay, so he goes there. Now I rather like this because I have the knight coming to c5. It's not, it's not the end of the world for him, but it seems unpleasant. And I'll probably just continue. So I should probably recycle that bishop, right? Now that that he's played g6, the bishop looks probably a little bit better on a2 in order to hit a more active target. So I think I can just play rook c1. I think it's better to be able to recapture with the rook rather than let him change the pawn structure. Would still be a little better for white, but I think this is more to the point. But he's played solidly. It's not it has not been an easy game here. So now I think my plan is just to play bishop a2 and then play rook c2, rook c1. At some point, I would consider playing e4, but it has to be the right time. All right, so now especially after f5, well, I could have taken on e6. Actually, I moved a little too fast here. f5, of course, not. f5 was not the best move, but I get another chance at it. I'm a little bit lucky here. But that being said, it was kind of an unpleasant position to play. Now he's opened things up, so I got to be a little bit careful. But the knight for now is pinned. E4 is a little counterintuitive, but it's not a bad move. I also like maybe playing a4. I think I'm going to play a4. Idea just to take and take. And I think my king is safe enough. I'm attacking pieces here, so you can play knight b6, probably his best move. And then I may Have to see what I do there. Probably this a4 was not that amazing, but now all right. Well, good game, Vincent. I think you gave me a tough fight there. All right, I think we got time for at least two more. Let's do two more, at least. Taking the first challenge here. I'm not going to try to pronounce this name. Black pieces. Feels like I got a few whites in a row. I think I'll go back to the King's Indian. I didn't, you know, the King's Indian is one of those openings where you feel like you're always suffering, and then you always come back to it anyway. I'm going to play with knight d7. You can also play with knight c6, a6, rook b8. Sort of a weird plan, but I'll play this way in this game. Now, there are different ways to play this also. There's a plan with e takes d4. I'm going for sort of a more concrete variation here, where the idea is to play ed, knight e5, c5, rook b8, and b5. All right, this move. So I don't remember how all of this goes, but I will take on d4. I'll start with rook e8. I'm not sure if there might be a more accurate move order, and then I'll play rook b8. Now, of course, when by playing b3, it means that when I play knight e5, I'm not hitting c4, so I don't gain a tempo there. But I can probably play c5 soon. Alright, so I think I'll play c5. And then I may be able to play either b5 or knight e5. After knight f3, I definitely like playing b5 because the e4 pawn can be unprotected in some lines. So for example, now can I just take on e4? Of course, it looks a little bit loose, but it may just be okay. Otherwise, I could try to take on c4 first, which actually looks quite reasonable, so I'm going to do that first. If queen takes e4, I can probably take with a rook on e4, or I could play knight d5 and certainly be okay. Alright, so here I'm still hitting the e4 pawn, and on queen c4 I can play either knight e4 and possibly rook b4 is a good intermezzo, just to and if b takes e4, then rook takes b2 looks like it's going to be at least a good position for black up a pawn. After he takes, knight takes e4, I can take the rook, he takes back, and the c4 pawn is still weak, and so that's definitely a good position. If he takes on f6, then bishop f6 hits the rook on a1. So I think this is an unpleasant position for white. There might be some way to hold it still. Doesn't look super easy to be to not be worse though. All right, so this move is a reasonable attempt. I was wondering about that move. So I'll probably take on b3 first. And then the question is sort of what to do next. So bishop f5 is tempting because it's hard for him. First of all, it's always nice to develop a piece. So I'm going to play bishop f5. It's nice to develop a piece, but it's also the one drawback, of course, is that the a6 pawn was protected by the bishop. Now it's not. However, I think the queen is finding it difficult. So if the queen wants to protect the bishop, it doesn't have a lot of good squares. So queen d2 runs into knight e4. Queen d2 is a self-pin. Maybe it's not a disaster, but it's a self-pin. So there's not a lot of good squares. It might be that the c1 square is the best, but then I can, at the least, I can play d takes e5 and b3 hangs. And I think in the resulting position, I'll at least be up a pawn for some moves, and we'll see if I can keep it, but I think so. Now on this move, I think I'm quite happy to play knight e4 here. Yeah, I mean, this position I definitely like, because again, it's hard for him to keep everything protected. So this, I think the simplest is probably just to take on e5. He's going to take on d8. Rook takes d8. He can take on a6. I'm up a pawn there. Maybe it's not the most convincing variation in history. What else can I do? Do have a little bit of a time advantage here. Considering also a move like rook b4, he can't take on d6 because there's the bishop hanging. So rook b4 sort of prepares bishop e6, but on the other hand, he simply takes this pawn. So I got to figure out the right move here. Queen b6 might be an interesting move. Simply trying to take on b3. I don't really see what he does there, and then I may just take on e5 next. That looks reasonable. I'm just going to do it. Can't take on d6 because b2 hangs, and otherwise I have ideas of queen takes b3, and it doesn't seem obvious what to do for him here. There's moves like knight h4, but again, there's no concrete threat there. Just taking the bishop, I can always take back, so I could probably just go queen takes b3. It forces a queen trade, and if he trades things, he's left down 2 pawns, and the e5 pawn is still hanging with the bishop in the back. So seems like a tough position there. So maybe his best move is something like rook a3 just to protect that pawn, but then I think it's time for me to just make a simple move and play d takes e5. So he finds it. That's a good move, actually. He found, I think, the best move in the position. I do wonder if d takes e5 is best. Also tempting to just play a move that protects the knight. Well, taking on e5. The problem is that if I take on e5, knight takes e5, he's actually hitting a few things there. But I can take on e5, bishop takes e5, rook to d8, and actually that does look winning. So I think I'll play this. But I still have to be. This is the kind of position where you still have to be careful. All right. So now I had calculated bishop e5, rook to d8, hitting the queen. And the idea is that, and I think I have to do it because he's actually attacking 2 pieces, so I don't actually have too much of a choice. But I think this does work out in my favor. I think it's lost here. I don't see how he defends the bishop, but yeah. So a pretty tough game. These lines, these King's Indian, I always feel like I'm suffering. So it's I don't know why I keep playing it. Alright, after this we'll play one more game. I'll try to pick one against a high-rated opponent here to make it a very good last game, and yeah, then we'll move on to the show about tomorrow's game. Here, a little fork to finish the game. Alright, so one more. Let's see. So here in my challenges, premium members, I have a challenge here from. Alright, a 2400 player here, 3-minute game. Let's see. Ipinikyan. Am I going to play is someone going to torture me in the King's Indian? No. So we'll play the Sicilian. I'll go for, well, knight c3. I like to play knight c6. I actually like this. This is a line that I've played in Blitz a lot, rook b8. In some cases, you kind of win a tempo. White doesn't have time to get their usual very comfortable setup. It's not like it's any better than any of the other lines. In fact, I'm sure it's not at all. But it does sort of just get white a little bit outside of their comfort zone, which So I think he's played okay here, but he's got to be a little bit careful. He's got to be a little bit careful about the center. I still think that this is fully playable, though he can probably play d5 here, and then maybe I can play knight e5. I don't know. I'm not sure. Maybe I should have taken on d4 first. I moved quickly. These 3-minute games, I've seen my time run away from me very fast. So I'm just going to continue as if I know what I'm doing, and we'll see. So I have, you know, the d3 square in some cases here. It looks attractive. I don't know if it does provide much, but we'll see. So f4, I would play knight d3, of course. And, you know, potentially could be supported by c4 if needed, or just taking the bishop. d6, I guess knight c6. Even knight c8 is actually conceivable because he might have trouble holding on to that pawn. I don't know. I actually rather like my position here. Actually, because, you know, in d6, knight c6, even if he gets f4, e5, I'll have so many pieces hitting e5 that I'll be able to break that with f6. So I think I just decided to go knight c6 to keep control of the e5 square a little better. And I think, you know, in this position, once I play f6, I will be able to sort of regain. Let me just castle first. You know, I guess I should play f6 first. And I think this is going to be a decent position. He could actually consider taking on c6 you know. Okay, so this move, this is the one drawback of not castling, is that, you know, this move is a little bit more annoying, but I think I'll just castle now. And I'm not too worried about giving up that bishop. But this is still an interesting position. He doesn't have much time. So now, of course, I want to take on e5. I didn't want to take and open up the f file before castling. I do think this position is still quite playable for him, though. So it's getting a little bit strange. You know, this pawn on d6 is going to be weak. At least that's my hope. So here, I think this is just not very good, because when I play f takes e5, f takes rook f1, I just think the pawns are going to start falling. I also could play rook f5, but I should probably just take this pawn, right? Yeah, I should just take this pawn. So play here, knight e5. Still not entirely clear. I mean, he's got some chances to he can play maybe bishop c5, rook b2. Okay, so this move, now I think I'm going to be fairly happy. In the worst case, I could play queen takes d6, followed by rook f8. That's probably the most logical. Up two pawns at least for one move. So he goes there. Okay. So now I like. Could play rook f8. He does want to play rook d1, which is a little bit annoying. So I may actually want to take on c3 and then play bishop d4 in order to just get that square for my so now I'm up 3 pawns, but of course I do have a bunch of weaknesses, so I just got to make sure that I don't get myself mated. But I think it's safe enough. If knight goes to d3, I probably should just take the knight, because it is a very strong knight. And now I just got to find a way to trade queens, or just actually queen d5 looks very strong, because, you know, it sort of allows me to untangle myself. So. Alright, well, that was a good game. I hope you guys had fun. I'm going to figure out the chat for next time so that I'm not just talking to myself, but also talking to you guys. And yeah, well, thank you for tuning in, and stay tuned, because we're going to have a preview show for tomorrow's game starting in just a few minutes, maybe about 10 minutes. So thank you very much, and have a good day, a good rest of your day, but stay with us. Thank you.